For 20 years, fans watched Professor McGonagall walk the halls of Hogwarts and never guessed what was really happening behind the scenes. Maggie Smith kept it hidden from almost everyone on set. The children never knew. The crew barely suspected. She showed up, delivered her lines, held that famous cold stare, and then disappeared into her trailer where the real story played out. At 89, just before she died in 2024, the full truth started coming out, and it was not what fans expected. What she was actually going through during those films changes everything we thought we knew. It all begins in a quiet place just outside London. Maggie Smith came into the world as Margaret Natalie Smith on December 28, 1934. Her life did not start with fame or applause. It started small, almost ordinary. Her mother worked as a secretary. Her father was a pathologist. When she was 4, the family moved to Oxford, a place filled with books, ideas, and long quiet days. Then something shifted. Her father died when she was only 9. That loss did not just pass through her. It stayed. It made her quiet in a different way. She watched more. She spoke less. Somewhere in that silence, she began to understand people in a way most children never do. At the same time, a strange contradiction was growing inside her. At just 4 years old, she stood in a church and recited poetry so clearly that she won a contest, holding the room in complete stillness. Yet outside that moment, she struggled to speak without stuttering. Words would trip over themselves, and she would shrink back. So instead, she learned to observe. She studied faces, tones, small gestures, and slowly built a shield out of wit. Acting gave her something even more powerful, a voice that did not belong to her fear. By 17, that quiet, watchful girl stepped onto a real stage. At the Oxford Playhouse, she played Viola in Twelfth Night. It should have felt like a breakthrough. But, behind the scenes, life was far from glamorous. She earned almost nothing, just a few pounds a week. She lived in cold rooms, ate little more than tea and toast, and counted every coin. Still, every night she stood under the lights, playing a character full of life while fighting hunger and doubt. That contrast shaped her. It hardened her. It made her rely on nothing except her own ability. Then, in 1956, she appeared on Broadway in New Faces of 56. She did not try to fit in. She did not try to be charming in the expected way. Instead, she leaned into oddness, into sharpness, into something almost uncomfortable. Critics did not know what to do with her at first. Some called her vulgar. Others saw something deeper, vulnerability, raw and honest. Around the same time, she faced rejection that could have stopped everything. Twice she applied to RADA, and twice she was turned away. She did not bend. She found another path through the Oxford Playhouse School. That rejection did not weaken her. It freed her. And then came the moment when everything seemed to ignite at once. In 1962, at just 27, she stepped onto the West End stage in The Private Ear, and the public eye, performing 2 completely different roles in the same night. The speed of the change shocked audiences. Critics called her electric. Laurence Olivier noticed that connection led her into one of the most intense experiences of her early career, playing Desdemona opposite Olivier's Othello. There were moments on stage that felt too real, like the time he struck her harder than expected. She later described it as a kind of battle. But from that tension came something powerful. Her Desdemona felt alive, frightened, desperate. But while her career was rising, her personal life began to strain. Her marriage to Robert Stevens started with promise, but slowly broke down. His drinking grew worse. His anger became unpredictable. By 1975, the marriage ended, leaving behind pain but also clarity. She walked away not just for herself, but for her children. And still, she kept going. In 1970, she stepped into Hedda Gabler, a role that demanded everything from her. She threw herself into the character's desperation, cruelty, and trapped rage. Night after night, it drained her. She collapsed backstage more than once. But the performance was unforgettable. By 1969, everything came together in the prime of Miss Jean Brodie. Her performance was bold, complex, and impossible to ignore. When she won the Oscar, She had beaten some of the biggest names of that time. It was proof that her way strange, sharp, unpredictable worked. In A Room with a View in 1985, she played Charlotte Bartlett as a snobbish chaperone whose lines had a sting to them. Helena Bonham Carter later remembered how Smith would slip in extra cutting remarks about class and behavior. James Ivory admired the way she brought real poison into Edwardian snobbery, and the performance earned her an Oscar nomination. Then came Gosford Park in 2001. As Constance, Countess of Trentham, Smith played an aging aristocrat with all the pride in the world and far less power than she wanted. Robert Altman's film lived on tension, class anxiety, and hidden resentment, but Smith made Constance feel even harsher by slipping in extra insults that revealed the prejudice sitting under the polished surface. Clive Owen remembered rehearsals stopping cold because of the venom in her delivery. Altman loved it. Helen Mirren's character watched her carefully, and the audience did too. By the time she reached The Lady in the Van in 2015, the sharpness was still there, but now it carried a more painful truth. She played Miss Shepherd, a homeless woman living in a van. After losing her husband, Beverly Cross, in 1998, Smith had learned how grief could settle into the body. During filming, she was also dealing with a hip replacement. At 80, she pushed through pain that would have stopped many actors. She refused stunt doubles and kept moving through rain, soaked scenes, turning her discomfort into part of the character's roughness. Then, in 2010, she arrived on Downton Abbey as Violet Crawley and found a whole new audience. From the moment she asked, "What is a weekend?" she became the heartbeat of the show. The line worked because she delivered it with complete confidence, as if the idea of ordinary workdays belonged to another species. Viewers loved it instantly. The clip spread everywhere, became a meme, and entered everyday culture. At 75, she was not simply part of a successful series. She was the soul of it. When she died in 2024, tributes poured in from across the industry. Just this year at the 2026 Oscars, a special In Memoriam segment dedicated nearly 2 minutes to Smith alone, with Cate Blanchett delivering a moving tribute that left the audience in tears. What made that period even more remarkable was that her health was already becoming a serious struggle. By 2015, glaucoma had blinded her in one eye. Reading scripts hurt. Close-ups were painful. Directors had to adjust angles to hide the problem. Still, she kept going. That same stubborn fire burned on stage as well. In 2019, at 84, she returned to the theatre in A German Life at London's Bridge Theatre, a 100-minute monologue as Brunhilde Pomsel, a former secretary of Joseph Goebbels. There were no distractions, no crowd scenes, no elaborate movement, just Smith, the words, and the terrible moral emptiness of a woman who had lived close to Nazi power. After 12 years away from the stage, she gave a performance many called one of the finest of her career. And then there was Harry Potter, which gave her a different kind of immortality. When she first entered Hogwarts in Sorcerer's Stone, she did not need spectacle to command attention. The camera looked up at her. The posture was straight. The chin was slightly raised. Suddenly, Professor McGonagall felt less like an actress in costume and more like a woman who had ruled that castle forever. The crew wanted her walk to be slow and exact. Every step seemed to carry authority. Even the younger actors felt it. When she arrived on set, the space changed. It no longer felt like a film set. It felt like a classroom, and nobody wanted to be the one to disappoint her. Yet her relationship with the Harry Potter world was never as dreamy as fans imagined. She read the books once and later admitted they did not fully satisfy her. That surprised many, but it makes sense. She loved theater live change, the way a character could grow through performance. In contrast, the books gave her a finished world already fixed in place. So, rather than becoming a fantasy devotee, she built McGonagall from something much more grounded, the idea of a strict, intelligent schoolteacher. That distance from the magical craze may actually be one reason the character felt so real. She was not playing wonder. She was playing discipline, judgment, and inner steel. That same control shaped even the physical side of the role. She treated the wand like something that required discipline, rehearsing angles and wrist movements carefully so her spells looked neat, sharp, and exact. People on set joked that she handled it like a trained stage weapon. Later, when Ralph Fiennes brought his own eerie improvisations into scenes as Voldemort, Smith met that energy with total calm. He could move slowly, speak with menace, stretch the tension. But she stared back with such cold authority that the clash felt real, two opposing forces testing each other. At the same time, fame came with frustrations. On the Graham Norton show, a child once asked her if she had really been a cat, referring to McGonagall's transformation. Smith laughed hard and gave a witty answer. But behind that reaction, there was also a hint of annoyance. She had spent a lifetime building performances with intelligence and craft. Now, part of the public wanted to reduce all that work to whether she had once turned into a pet. That irritation became much easier to understand once people learned what she had been living through during the later Harry Potter films. While filming Half-Blood Prince and then continuing into Deathly Hallows, she was quietly battling breast cancer. Off-camera, chemotherapy left her weak, bald, and deeply exhausted. She later said it flattened her completely. There were times she had to grip railings just to stay steady between takes. She nearly quit. She was unsure whether she could finish. Yet the people making the films believed McGonagall mattered too much to lose. Somehow, Smith forced herself through it. For Deathly Hallows, she worked under wigs, joking darkly about how she looked. But the humor covered something far harder. She was proud of herself for getting through it, and she should have been. On screen, audiences still saw the stern face, the clipped words, the hard stare. They did not see the private misery behind them. In later interviews, she spoke plainly. She was grateful for Harry Potter, but she also said it was not the most challenging material she had ever done. She felt there were too many reaction shots, too much waiting, not enough of the living creative danger she loved in theater. Even the practical side wore her down: the giant hats, heavy costumes, endless cold, waiting in trailers. After her death, clips of these remarks spread widely online, and some people tried to turn them into proof that she hated the role. That was too simple. What she hated was drudgery. What she disliked was creative limitation. She could be grateful and honest at the same time. That blunt honesty was part of what made her Maggie Smith in the first place. The people around her often only understood the full truth later. Emma Watson praised the way Smith held her own among the male authority figures at Hogwarts. Rupert Grint spoke movingly after her death about the hidden pain she had endured while still being kind and funny around the younger cast. The children saw the wit, the command, the playfulness, the professionalism. They did not see the sickness behind it. She carried that alone. In 2024, when the news of her cancer battle finally became public, fans were heartbroken but also in awe. In 2026, the Harry Potter franchise continues to expand with the Max series in development, and producers have confirmed that McGonagall's legacy will be honored in the new adaptation. Casting rumors for a younger McGonagall have ignited social media debates, with fans arguing that no one could ever truly fill Smith's shoes. When she died on September 27, 2024, at the age of 89, fans raised wands for her in tribute. For once, the gesture felt fully deserved. McGonagall had always stood for dignity, discipline, and strength. Smith had given her all of that because she had lived all of that. What remained was not just a list of awards or famous lines. What remained was an image that ran through every part of her career. A woman with a sharp mind, a harder will, and a gift for making every sentence land exactly where it should. She could terrify children in a manor house, rule an English estate with one raised eyebrow, carry a 100-minute monologue about moral blindness, or walk into Hogwarts and make the whole place feel real. Even in illness, even in age, even when the work exhausted her, she kept performing with discipline and bite. That is why she lasted. That is why people kept watching. And that is why, even now, once you start reading about her, it is hard to stop.